Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, stormers, warmers and tax reformers, welcome along to the Joe Spivey YouTube channel where we discuss books and little else. And never, folks and loyal subscribers and acolytes and courtiers, have I ever felt the firmness of the immovable technological yoke on my shoulders. Never have I felt it more firmly than I do now. It was but a few days ago where I came to acquire a really rather sort of capable camera for this YouTube lark. I've got it here with me, and I can take wonderful pictures with it. It's all in HD and sort of 30 frames per second, 1080p video, and all's well and good. It befits somebody of my, sort of eloquent brilliance and things like that. I've finally upped my technological game, but I cannot for the life of me move the videos from the camera to the Canon app on my phone. I cannot for the life of me do it via a USB cable. I can't do it via the Wi-Fi connectivity. I can move the photos across perfectly well, as I'm hoping you can see from the brushed up HD thumbnail that is the sort of frontispiece to this video. I hope you'll be able to tell that. But I was on the phone with my dear father, Viceroy Spivey, and it suddenly struck me that, of course, I now have 2,500 people to consult whenever I have one of these niggling issues. So this is the camera in question. It's a what is it? It's an EOS 2000D. Sort of the much heralded beginner's camera, about I think £400 or £500 or something, with an 18 to 35mm lens. So I can get the photos across to the app, but I cannot, when I record a video, I can't transfer the videos across to my mobile phone. So if there are, any sweaty nerds out there that really do know what they're doing, please leave some information for me down below, because I should like you to see me in resplendent 1080p rather than whatever it is this potato of an iPad records me on. So yes, that has pretty much been, as I say, that yoke has been hung over my neck and shoulders for the last few days. But anyway, welcome along to Random Reviews, where we take apart a work usually of canonical literature, and today is no different, folks. This is the 1844 work Coningsby by Benjamin Disraeli. Back in the day when Prime Ministers of Great Britain used to write fiction, folks. Can you believe such a time used to exist? Nowadays they consort with Russian oligarchs and sell arms to Saudi Arabia and spread their seed all over metropolitan London. They don't sit down at a desk and type out some, admittedly quite magniloquent prose, as we will be discussing today. Yes, but this is Coningsby, written in 1844, and our eponymous Harry Coningsby is the grandson of a sort of closeted, really very dependent sort of Lord Monmouth, who is obviously very wealthy and very, financially able, and he sees to it, it becomes clear very quickly that Coningsby's come from a little bit of a disreputable marriage, and yes, so we very, very quickly, he is provided for and sent to Eton College, that what would you say, that kennel of political acuity, also known as Eton College. He's sent across there, and he cultivates very many friendships, and has great camaraderie with an intimate circle of friends. But one day, an accident strips the Etonian grounds, the lustrous Etonian grounds, and somebody called Oswald Millbank falls into the pond. He's out doing something ridiculously ostentatious like yachting or sailing or rowing or something like that. And yes, he is submerged and he is saved by Coningsby, and we are then led to believe that Oswald has been admiring Coningsby for quite some... Mr. Millbank has been admiring Coningsby for quite some time, and finally feels confident enough to voice his admiration for Coningsby. And really this is, a sort of Bildungsroman of boisterous boyhood and evolving, I don't like the word evolving, growing and maturing into a temperate masculinity. And yes, as is the case with Bildungsromans, it's I don't know really. It's both too much and too little. If we were to get into the gristle of my criticism, first of all, Disraeli does sort of, what is it? He focuses very, 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 very tightly in a sort of Ellottian way, as George Eliot would, on the minutiae of behaviour and interaction and feeling and the undulations of everyday life. Can spend we'll spend 3 pages happily talking about, a coach ride or somebody's feelings towards another, and yet I sense anyway that characters aren't really developed in this. We always talk about, on this channel anyway, density of character and dimensionality of them, whether they are capable of both anger and sorrow and transgression and virtue, whether they're capable of those at the same time and what that leads to. Those things aren't really developed in what could be defined of as a professional way, really. But yeah, it's a Bildungsroman interpolated with really just bits of Disraeli's commentary on here. So it's worth noting Disraeli was 40 at the time. He born in 1804, this comes out in 1844, so he's 40, but he's not Prime Minister until, I believe I'm going to blunder through this. It might have been the early 1870s that he was then Prime Minister. So it's a good long while until he was 60, I think, when he was actually Prime Minister. So this is actually a good long while before he, climbs the greasy pole, as he would have it. And it focuses on the 1832 Reform Bill. The Great Reform Act, or the sort of Parliamentary Reform Act, which I'm going to again blunder over, and any parliamentary scholars down below, I'm sure there are at least a dozen of you in my subscriber count. Please let me know down below whether I have completely muddied the waters here, but it was essentially a reapportioning of some of the constituencies of England. You would not believe, folks, how rigged the system was for landowners and for people who called themselves parliamentary members of Parliament, whose election was decided by sometimes as narrow as a dozen people. All you needed was 12 or 13 votes from people in that area, and there you were in the pews of the House of Commons. So that was sort of redone in 1832, and you've got the Whigs, and then you've got Robert Peel, who eventually came to the idea, or came to formalise the Metropolitan Police. So you've got the Conservatives, and you've got the Whigs, and you've got the difference between what Coningsby and some of his friends come to discuss, which is political expediency and sort of bedrock ideas, and how they intertwine, and how they actually combat one another, and how people conflate the former with the latter. Whether what is popular ought to be promulgated, or what is fundamentally correct and better for the country at large. All of those things are sort of put about in paragraphs, but they're not really put into... I'm writing a novel at the moment about similar things, and they're not really plopped into the dialect or some of the dialogue in the book, which is what I'm trying to do. They're just a sort of copy and pasted. It's as if they've been copy and pasted from one of Disraeli's diary entries, candlelit diary entries the night before. He doesn't really integrate them very well. But anyway, Coningsby then leaves Eton and goes aboard, sort of marauds the countryside for a little while, comes across a really charismatic person who we soon learn to be called Sidonia, who, again, they talk about... Everybody's always predicting the implosion of Parliament, and there being a dissolution of Parliament, or some sort of ravaging watershed climacteric time, which means that new people are going to be voted in. Of course, this never really happens. But he goes soon after that, he goes to one of his old friends, Henry Sidney from Eton, whose family has a nice seat. I think it's pronounced... I'm going to go with Beaumanoir, something like that, where he meets the gorgeous society of some very eloquent and pretty women, and he is overawed by that and feels repeatedly inferior when talking to them, and the usual type of things whenever you come across a clever woman, particularly if you've been at a public school and have never encountered such brilliance. And yes, then Lord Monmouth starts to get a little bit chirpier with Mr. Coningsby. He says that he wants him to stand in the constituency of Darlford, and of course, Mr. Coningsby, Harry Coningsby, who is by now about 20, will be a shoo-in for such a role. But Oswald Millbank, who Coningsby saved from the river all that time ago, has a father who is the owner of a factory, and again you have Disraeli sort of contemplating the differences between not the nouveau riche, but the burgeoning middle class, and those who have acquired wealth and influence via their what would you say, ingenuity, and some of how they've gone from rags to riches at least. Whereas, of course, Coningsby and Lord Monmouth, or Lord Monmouth in particular, stands for the might is right, and of inheritance, and inheriting that influence rather than earning it. So you've got that interplay as well. Edith Millbank, who is the younger sister of Oswald Millbank, soon falls irrevocably in love with Coningsby, as always happens. And there is essentially only about 80% of the way through do we really get a real dilemma, a real crux, a real sort of apex or climax of action where there's jeopardy. For most of it, it is an albeit eloquent and enjoyable and entertaining read, but there's not an awful lot at stake really. There are two blokes called Tadpole and Taper who write really acidic, sort of vitriolic columns. There's Mr. Rigby, who is Lord Monmouth's, again, sort of courtier or, helper-in-chief, who ferrets about the commons and seeks to influence other people on behalf of Lord Monmouth. So there's bits and bobs going about, but it's not until... first of all, this is a TARDIS of a novel, folks. This looks a tiny little thing that you could perhaps rip through over a weekend. This is 500 pages. This is probably 140,000 words. This has taken me much longer to read than I anticipated, but I've got a few sections for you to read out, so that you can at least grasp something of... because Disraeli's excellent, to use that Nancy critical phrase, on the page, on the sentence level. He is companionable and very hospitable and, immensely readable as it is. So this is talking about the underestimation of Coningsby when he's 7 or 8, or, a little bit older. We are too apt to believe that the character of a boy is easily read. 'Tis a mystery the most profound. Mark what blunders parents constantly make as to the nature of their own offspring, bred, too, under their own eyes, and displaying every hour their characteristics. How often in the nursery does the genius count as a dunce because he is pensive, while a rattling urchin is invested with almost supernatural abilities because his animal spirit make him impudent and flippant. The schoolboy, above all others, is not the simple being the world imagines. So it's full of those sweeping statements and... appeals to universality that he's clearly a fan of. This is exploratory of the all-encompassing nature of pride and devotion. This is when the little Oswald Millbank has been saved by his hero Coningsby. Pride was a sentiment that could no longer subsist before the preserver of his life. Devotion to that being, open, almost ostentatious, was now a duty, a paramount and absorbing tie. The sense of past peril, the rapture of escape, a renewed relish for the life so nearly forfeited, a deep sentiment of devout gratitude to the providence that had guarded over him, for Millbank was an eminently religious boy, a thought of home and the anguish that might have overwhelmed his hearth, all these were powerful and exciting emotions for a young and fervid mind. So you can see there, Disraeli's really going for it. You can't say he's, being sort of in any way sort of scanty or, he's sort of holding us back or is hoarding anything from us. He's splurging everything all over the page. He's giving us all sorts of insight. But the longer this goes on, you have to think, to what end? So there are a few extra things that I could read out, but that about covers it. It will probably, if you're used to Victorian novels, it will appeal to young, adrenalised adult males like myself because it sets up that weird sort of almost what you get whenever you read something Hitlerian, in that you're just a boy in the gutter, but with 3 or 4 years of concentrated work, you could master the world and have millions of men at your behest. That weird sort of Caesarian desire to rule over people. Started from the bottom, now we're here. I don't often quote Drake, but I am doing now. Disraeli, sort of a funny character in British history, really. Obviously, he's a champion of one nation conservatism. answers on a postcard as to what on earth how that would be defined nowadays, but I only know whenever Disraeli's name is mentioned, obviously then Glaston is inextricably linked with him as well. A sophisticated rhetorician inebriated with the exuberance of his own verbosity is, I think, the phrase. I may be wrong on that, but feel free to correct me. So yes, again, this is typical of the Victorian era. Whenever you mention a Victorian, if you were to list Victorian authors, Disraeli probably wouldn't be in the top 15, and yet he is perfectly consummate and perfectly serviceable on the page to read. Such is the case with Victorian literature. People that if this book was produced nowadays with a little bit of modern modulation, it would probably win every award in New York and London. And yet, in the Victorian times, he is but a footnote, really, and the only reason that it's printed and republished, albeit that this is a copy from 40 years ago, the only reason he's republished is because he was a Prime Minister, really, not because of his literary brilliance, I don't think. But this is, the start of a bit of a trilogy, I think. I can't remember the other two names, but I'm not overly anxious to get involved because, as I say, it was a bit much and also not enough simultaneously, if that makes sense. But yes, hopefully you enjoyed that little review of Benjamin Disraeli's Coningsby with a few extended and convoluted extracts. But yes, this is, at the moment, my best friend and worst enemy. A fine servant, but not a very good master. So if you can, again, if you've made it to the end of this video, please do leave down below how it is I can go from getting the images from here via Wi-Fi connectivity to an app on my phone. I can get photos across and I can see the video there, but just as I click on the video to download, it says that the MOV format isn't permissible or transferable on my phone, and therefore I can't do it to upload to YouTube. And so we are still sort of, I'm still jabbering in front of an iPad, folks, despite I haven't myself parted, but despite having had a really rather expensive camera bought for me. So yes, if you could indeed help me, that would be, I would then give you all of the emoluments and salary which it is in my power to bestow. Any present that you want from me, if you want a voice message or if you want me to remove my underpants, then I would happily be able to do that. But I just really need this camera to work, folks. I'm sure you can see how desperate I am. But yes, that was a review of Benjamin Disraeli's Coningsby and a call for help as well. So yes, if you've made it to the end of this video, nearly 18 minutes in about me jabbering on about nothing, then congratulations. But yes, thanks ever so much for watching BookTube, and goodbye.